The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
We are starting to see what it's like to have a more conservative Supreme Court than we've had in a long time. The Supreme Court is now preparing to make every state's gun laws look sort of like Texas gun laws. There's a case which is New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. New York. And this case is a potential boon of a case for gun rights activists, because since 2008, DC v. Heller and 2010's McDonald's v. Chicago, you've had groups like the NRA urging the courts to create a constitutional right to publicly carry a weapon. And the goal is ban the government at a national level from banning concealed carry and open carry. This would let almost all Americans, unless they are barred from carrying a firearm for other reasons, it would allow almost all Americans to possess a gun and carry it in public. In some cases, it would be hidden, concealed. In some cases, it would be open carry. And the legal results have been mixed. Obviously, the political positions are very, very mixed, depending on your view on gun safety. But the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit found a right to concealed carry outside the home. The 7th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals found the same thing. But the 2nd U.S. Court of Appeals found that there is no Second Amendment right to carry a concealed handgun in public. Just because you have a Second Amendment, the 2nd Circuit found, doesn't mean that everybody has an undeniable right to concealed carry in public. The 9th U.S. Circuit has sort of split the decision. They upheld limitations on concealed carry, but they invalidated restrictions on public carry. And when you have these splits between different circuit courts, that will sometimes make it so that the Supreme Court opts not to hear cases on the issue. And in fact, the Supreme Court so far has declined to take a public carry case and to resolve the matter once and for all. And the main reason seemed to be Justice Anthony Kennedy. He was the one who, according to numerous records about this, influenced Justice Antonin Scalia to add language that limits the Heller decision. But Kennedy is gone. Brett Kavanaugh is there. He's a gun rights enthusiast. He takes a very, very expansive view of the Second Amendment. And now, Pat, it seems as though this New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. New York case could potentially be the one that gets in front of this conservative Supreme Court and might drastically expand concealed and open carry laws across the entire country. And by the way, once again, states' rights when they like it, or go to the federal government when they don't.
I was going to jump right into that. You know, this would be the case where I think states' rights, that argument should come into play the most, because when you talk about New York City, the gun laws there should be very different than in rural Texas, because you're dealing with far more people, different culture, and different crime rates. So I think it's perfectly acceptable for someone to have an open carry out in the desert, right? But not necessarily when you're walking the streets of Manhattan. That's where I think the state and local government should be able to make its own decisions. Whereas, you know, a different topic like maybe gay marriage, I think that if gay marriage is deemed moral and right and should be legal in Kentucky, it should also be the same in California. Guns, I think the states' right argument should come into play, but when you have conservative justices on the court, they're going to pick and choose when and they want to invoke that states' right argument.
And this is exactly why every time we read something like this, I'm reminded that there were people on the left who ignored the importance of the Supreme Court when thinking about who to vote for in 2016. There were some people who said, I don't care if Trump is worse than Hillary. Hillary's also bad, and I'm going to ignore the issue of the Supreme Court. Well, this is what you get, and it's an absolute and total disaster. My brother was recently in Japan, and one of the things he mentioned to me was how crowded the subway system is, but efficient, and it runs well, and everybody's very polite and organized, but it is very, very crowded. And something that Tokyo is now trying to do to improve the experience of the morning commute is to provide soba noodles and tempura. The metro system is now offering vouchers for the buckwheat noodles and fried snack of tempura for commuters to grab some before they get on the train before rush hour. And so far, more than 8,000 people have signed up for this program. and you have to register your Metro card online, and then you have to be in the subway system, have swiped through the turnstile before a certain time, and then this will allow you to get some tempura or soba noodles. I absolutely love this, Pat, and I can't imagine what the equivalent would be here in Boston, but my prediction is that it wouldn't work too well here.
Well, in some cities in the United States, you get charged more if you're traveling during peak hours. Like that's true in Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles. Instead of having to pay, maybe $2 for a subway ride, you have to pay $3. That's very much the stick approach, whereas Japan here is taking the carrot approach, or I guess the noodle approach, which I tend to like a lot better.
Yeah, I certainly do like it, and I don't know if there are vegan options necessarily here, but I'm sure I can make a phone call for you, Pat, and find out if that's something they might be willing to accommodate. Although I don't know how many or during rush hour trips on the Tokyo subway you'll necessarily be taking in the next year or so. But I plan to go to Japan. I've been trying to see if it might be possible in 2019. It's not looking too good, but it's definitely on my list for no later than 2020. And I hope to make it happen. I don't know if you've been interested in Japan.
Yeah, I would love to go. And you could always chalk it up as like David Pakman Show reporting abroad. Instead of saying that you're taking a vacation, maybe you want to take a look at Japanese politics, the relationship between Shinzo Abe and Donald Trump. I think the audience would support you in that.
If you thought that the time difference was complex to produce the show when I was in Paris, France over the summer, you have no idea how complicated it would be with me in Tokyo, which I believe is 13 hours ahead or behind the East Coast United States. That would be a doozy for us, but you wouldn't mind doing the show at 2 a.m., would you, Pat?
No, 2 a.m., that would be totally fine. I tend to do my best writing at 2 a.m. For one reason or another, so I think we could make that happen.
Yeah, that's something we'll talk about and report back to the audience. But no, seriously, I hope to get to Japan in the next 18 months, and we'll see if we can make that happen. Okay, the Super Bowl is coming up, and here in New England, what we call it is an annual tradition, of course, because the Patriots have been so good, and I am very much looking forward to watching that and hopefully seeing the Patriots. The Patriots are much better at getting to the Super Bowl, Pat, than winning it. That we have experienced over the last 10 years.
Well, yeah, this will be our third straight Super Bowl. But before this year, we won 2 out of 3, was it? So I don't know. We've been doing quite well. And actually, in the Brady era,
Yes,
we're 5-3. So I would say we're just as good at winning it as we are getting to it.
Yeah, we're almost as good, I think I would say. But in any case, one of the big draws for people is not so much the football, but the commercials, even though I found them to be worse and worse over the last several years. Not surprisingly, there was an attempt to buy a commercial for a multi-state cannabis company. Now that marijuana is legal recreationally in many parts of the country and legal medicinally in even more parts of the country, Acreage Holdings, which is backed by none other than former Republican Speaker of the House John Boehner, who follows me on Twitter, says that CBS rejected a TV ad during the Super Bowl that calls for further marijuana legalization. And the network they didn't produce the ad, but they saw an outline of what the ad would be. And John Boehner's company is claiming that they rejected the ad and that it's unclear why. CBS didn't immediately reply to a request yesterday, although maybe they will respond soon. I'm not surprised that they rejected it, Pat, because it is a political advocacy ad, and I think that I have no problem with it, but I'm not surprised to see the Super Bowl sort of get away from that, although historically, there have been ads that they've accepted that have implicit, if not explicit, political messages.
I was super cynical and even conspiratorial at first. I thought maybe they didn't want to play a medical marijuana ad because they also have pharmaceutical ads during the Super Bowl. But then I thought that really can't be the reason because they'll have, different beverage companies like Coke and Pepsi. They'll allow both of them to run an ad, or different car companies. They'll have Ford and Chevy both run an ad. So I don't think it's necessarily that. It's really just that medical marijuana and marijuana in general isn't mainstream enough yet. And they have to worry about their own PR, how they look among common folk in the middle of the country. I think that's it. I think it's going to be a few more years until this is totally mainstream.
I agree. I think it's just an aversion to what they see as potentially bringing negativity towards the perception of the sort of family friendliness of the Super Bowl. It's not my view. I think that this is their view. I would not be surprised if in 5 years it has become so much more mainstream that you do see cannabis-related ads during the Super Bowl. I wish that they would run it. I think it would be great to give such a national platform to advocating for something so obvious and that really should not be controversial. But I'm not shocked that this is the decision that the network is making. And maybe next year. Maybe next year. Slightly shorter bonus show today. We are on a little bit of a wacky schedule, but we will make it up to you tomorrow. I promise.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.